Victories notched up by Democrats in Tuesday's off-year elections show that abortion rights will continue to energize voters ahead of the 2024 presidential race. Democrats and abortion rights advocates recorded a string of electoral victories, including in conservative Ohio and Kentucky.
Last night, I think the American people made clear that they are prepared to stand for freedom and for the individual freedoms and the promise of freedom in America. And by extension, it was a good night for democracy. I think that if you look at from the midterms to last night, from California to Kansas, Ohio to Virginia, the voters said, look, the government should not be telling a woman what to do with her body.
Time and again, pollsters and pundits have counted Joe Biden and Democrats out. We have continued to dig deep, fight back, deliver results for the American people, and win. And what we won on last night is exactly what we're going to win on next November.
In Ohio, a state that voted for Republican Donald Trump by 8 percentage points in the 2020 presidential election, voters approved a constitutional amendment guaranteeing abortion rights, Edison Research projected. Professor Larry Sabato of the University of Virginia said that abortion would likely be one of the 2 or 3 biggest issues of 2024, not just for president, but for governor and state legislators and U.S. Senate and U.S. House races.
It is a big win for Democrats. In fact, surprisingly so. I don't think anybody in advance expected Democrats to do as well as they did overall. They won everything except for the Mississippi governorship, and even that was closer than it usually is. And there were races that haven't been mentioned nationally that favored Democrats. For example, New Jersey, their whole assembly was up. And Democrats were supposed to lose at least a dozen seats. That was the consensus on both sides. They've picked up 5 or 6. It's almost all due to abortion rights and the controversy that has come since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade.
Tuesday's outcome in Ohio extended an unbeaten streak for abortion access advocates since the U.S. Supreme Court's decision last year to overturn its 1972 Roe v. Wade ruling and eliminate a nationwide right to end pregnancies.
The question going into 2023 was, well, is it still as hot button now that we are over a year away from that Dobbs decision? Now that so many states have already gone and passed laws or passed other ballot initiatives that maybe just doesn't have the same resonance that it did when it was such a shock to the system. And I think the answer is it still does have resonance, and it's likely to continue to have resonance going into 2024.
I think it's reasonable to assume that abortion rights will be one of the 2 or 3 biggest issues of 2024, not just for president, but for governor and state legislators and U.S. Senate and U.S. House races.
Amy Walter, editor-in-chief of the Cook Political Report, said that polling shows most Americans want abortion rights to be legal in some form, and that Republicans are now perceived as the party that is more extreme on the issue.
We've been seeing polling now for years that tells us that, majority of voters believe that abortion should be legal in some way, shape, or form. Now, what the parameters around that look like will be different for different people. But I just keep going back to the takeaways I had from listening to voters in the midterm elections, many of whom were Republican, who defined themselves as pro-life. And they would say, well, I'm pro-life, but I didn't think it meant no one could have access to abortion.
In Virginia, Democrats won control of both legislative chambers, according to the Associated Press. The result was a rebuke for Republican governor who campaigned hard for Republican candidates and sought to unify them around his proposal to ban most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy.